retailing, apparel, and so on. On the next slide, John mentioned the demographics. The city is about, according to the U.S. Census, about 64% Asian, 42% is Chinese, and about 1/3 is Hispanic, about 30%. But when you look at the western San Gabriel Valley, essentially the cities around you as a whole, you can see there's a little higher concentration of Hispanic, Latino, 45%, whereas the Asians about 1/3. Okay, the next slide shows you the roller coaster ride that we're all suffering under, which is retail sales. Since Prop 13, retail sales became the dominant revenue that cities had to seek. And of course, we know what's happened with fiscalization of land use, but you can see here, the top curve in real dollars shows you around a little over 500 million in retail sales in the early 90s, and you've dropped to a little less than 400 million. That's about a 20-25% drop. What it's showing you is that the expenditure pattern, you're very much tied to the economy. These are one of the indicators that you've got to always track. And one of the mistakes that a number of cities made in the early 2000s when things were growing is they straight lined their projections and spent a lot of their revenues not realizing that the economy is cyclical. You really have to track this and tie it to your budget. One significant thing I want to point out about this one is the lower line. You can see it kind of decreasing. That's the line for business-to-business sales. Those are taxable sales, but they are when businesses sell to other businesses, not at retail outlets. And you can see it's declined from about 200 million down to a little bit less than 100 million. So that's something to take a look at. Some of those businesses might be in McCaslin's, they might be in Monterey Park. As we'll show you in a moment, there's a high amount that comes from Monterey Pass Road. Next slide. This just shows you what you already know. On the left, that green bar, second from the left, about 4,800 is your per capita retail sales. You can see you're far below the stripe bar in the middle, which is about 10,000. That's your per capita retail sales average for western San Gabriel Valley. So you've got some neighbors around you that have been taking up a lot of the market, Montebello Hills, you've got Alhambra, and you've got other cities on the move. So you have to be prepared to present yourself well, to have the right marketing, landscaping, and the right mix of development. Next slide. This just summarizes the economic development areas. I won't go through all of them. We created 17 diverse areas. Generally, there's 3 each along Atlantic Boulevard and along Garfield. The downtown is the heart of the city. We really think that's an important priority, and there's work that can be done. There's a business improvement district, there's a chamber. All of the groups have to work together. The Atlantic Times Square is a good development in the north. The town center is bringing in the right kind of development in the downtown, and you have to work together with the urban design, the issue of parcelization, small parcels, and finding ways to incentivize people to combine their parcels for better, more efficient development. You do have the 2 strong areas, the Los Angeles Corporate Center and McCaslin, and just to the east of McCaslin is the Monterey Park Marketplace. I know that's been on the books for a long time. John mentioned 25 years for Atlantic Times Square. I think Monterey Park Marketplace has been around for at least as long, but it's an important component. It's really your only place that you can bring in regional retail, and it has freeway exposure. On the next slide, this is just showing you the diversity of employment among your different centers. The 2 bars on the left show you McCaslin and Corporate Center. You can see it's largely office, professional, technical. The blue lines show you where your retail concentrations are along the Atlantic Boulevard corridor and the downtown. And the yellow bar, you can't quite make it out, but in Atlantic, in Garfield North and Atlantic Mid, you've got the 2 hospitals. So quite a diversity, each area. And the point of this slide is that each area needs a little bit different attention depending on what the characteristics are and what you want to bring out. For example, if you talk about Atlantic South, if you go to the next slide, you can see that Atlantic South is your strongest retailing center. It's got the auto mall, it's got the neighborhood or the community retail, but the other thing it has is the college. and they bring in a lot of expenditure, particularly in restaurants and little shops. So those are things you have to work on. Of course, we know that it does have congestion. I've been there when the college is let out. Those are issues. We also know that there's a transit center that's just been developed close to that. And those are things to take into consideration. And the transit center, or the transit line, the Gold Line, will be extended past Garfield. There'll be a station there, and those are opportunities to build on. You can see the downtown is lower. This one, as John referred to, the yellow bar in the middle is the $104 per square foot average. Now, if you go to the Urban Land Institute and you look at a typical neighborhood center, community center, you'll be in the 175 to maybe 250 range, depending on their location. You can see that Atlantic South, the third bar down, is 193. So that area seems to be performing pretty well. But when you look at the downtown, when we took the square footage and the retail sales that we got from your sales tax consultant, Hinard Lighter Lamas, you can see that it's below average. So even though there are a lot of businesses there, there are probably ways that that expenditure can be strengthened. And maybe we're losing people by not having good parking and other advantages to the downtown. So those are things to think about and to look towards in the strategy. On the next slide, this I wanted to show you because this is your non-retail sales, which is your business to business. You can see that Monterey Pass is generating about $29 million of non-retail taxable sales. So there's a lot of activity in addition to the jobs there. And that area, which has been zoned through the planning process to employment technology, can continue to be a strong non-retail sales generator. On the next slide, on the strategic plan, I'll go into the next slide, Donna. I'll summarize these fairly quickly. We've set priorities, and there's a lot we're presenting today, so there's going to have to be other meetings to go through some of the details. But we dealt with priorities that were both citywide as well as down to specific areas. So, for example, some of the economic policies citywide deal with the issue of retail, with job diversity, and with tracking the performance indicators. Urban design gets right down to the detailed neighborhood level. As we'll see in a moment, there's a lot of ways that Monterey Park can market itself through its signage, through its streetscape, et cetera. Financing, budgeting, very important to tie economic development issues with priorities, because if you can't fund it and find ways to fund it, you can't implement it. Tourism, lodging, the global connections have always been strong, and we only want to build on that. Already, the staff is working with the hotels and the tour operators to make conditions better, but we know that over the long term, there are opportunities for more hotels and more lodging opportunities, which also is a strong generator of hotel tax, which is a general fund revenue source. Community outreach, one of the things we're asking today, one of the actions we'd like you to take is to give the staff the direction to now start getting some more public outreach. We've done a lot, but we want to have some public forums and get people's feedback, get more engaged with the chamber, with the business improvements district, et cetera. And finally, I mentioned the tracking indicators. On the next slide, continue to maintain the diversified economy. This city, in doing this analysis, has been shown to have a tremendously diversified economy. That doesn't mean that there aren't ways to improve it, but when I look at a lot of suburban communities that I work with, they're nowhere near this diversified. Typically, the suburban communities have very much just retail and service. You've got a strong job base that cuts across medical, professional, technical,